All right, we're recording.
I'll call the meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission, August 18th, 2022, to order. Do roll call. Mike Havlin.
Here.
Here. John Bayless. David Cobb.
Here.
Douglas Dunn. Here. Sandy Huesman.
Here.
Nancy Parana. Michael Spitzer. And we have also our city manager as well as our assistant city clerk. First item is call the public, and this is anyone who wishes to speak on a subject other than the agenda item. So we'll move on to agenda item 1, which is possible recommendations of the mayor and council, consideration of changes to Article 7, light pollution code. And we've got a gentleman here who can speak to us. Ready? Yes. Okay. Again, you took me out to lunch a long time ago when I was on the city council. You've been working on this for some time.
That's right.
So I'm pleased. So.
Going on. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruce Surratt. I'm with the Bisbee Dark Skies Initiative. And I'm bringing some updated lighting ordinances before you to address some issues that were left out of the previous lighting ordinances that were approved unanimously by this board back in 2019. And before we get into questions or something like that, I'd like to bring up a few high points that I think we need to remember that override all of this. Number one is these ordinances do not take away anybody's lights. If we have some issues with somebody, basically it's changing a fixture and things like that. And so nobody's lights get taken away by these new ordinances. It just controls some of the issues there. The second one that I think is near and dear to everybody's heart here, this shouldn't cost the city any money. This will go into effect, and as new commercial buildings come in and they get approved by the city and everything, the lighting plans, the contractors and stuff, the builders will need to be paying for this and not the city. So it should, other than maybe the building inspector having to solve a few issues occasionally, or whoever approves the plans, building plans at the city here, they have some time that they may have to deal with new issues, but other than that, it won't cost the city any money. So that's an important thing to remember. Things we need to review before we brought it to you guys so it didn't have to go back and forth 3 or 4 times. This has already been reviewed by the city attorney and the building inspector, and they've approved these ordinances for your review tonight. So you guys are the last hurdle on the way before it gets to the city council. Okay, that's all I wanted to stress. Does anybody have any questions about all this? Yeah?
So when you said that the existing lights don't need to be removed?
No, they don't. If actually most of what the city has is already compliant. The big thing we've been worried about was the new street lights. And a lot of people don't like the new street lights, but they already are considered dark skies compliant. We may not like them that much, but if there's been an ordinance on the books that about light trespass, if one neighbor's complaining about somebody's light shining over there, that's when the building inspector comes out and he says, yes, your light's shining, you can't shine it in your neighbor's yard here. And then they have 30 days to get a new fixture. And that's been on the books for years before I even came along.
So for an existing outdoor light fixture that's not dark sky compliant, is that considered a pre-existing non-use?
It is, and that's addressed in the ordinances here. Basically, we've given them a 10-year opportunity to get that changed.
Gotcha. So at some point they do have to have it changed, but it's 10 years.
Eventually. We hope that all this will be settled and done within the next 10-year period.
I didn't have a chance to read it, but is this pretty consistent with the city of Tucson for their dark sky compliance?
Same thing. And You know, the approval that's done through this goes through the International Dark Skies Association that has its headquarters in Tucson. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Huachuca City is already dark skies compliant. They got a lot of money from the feds because they are under the final approach to the Sierra Vista Airport that's shared with the military. And they got a bunch of money from the military to change out their existing lights that were causing problems with guys coming in on final approach at nighttime. And so it's around here. Sedona's already has dark sky compliance. Flagstaff was the first city in the state to achieve this. That was, what, almost 15, 20 years ago,
Yeah,
something like that.
Counting of lumens and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Fully shielded and all that is still.
Exactly the same way. There's some issues in here on lumens per acre that a lot of Bisbee stuff isn't even concerned by that, but it's like if Lawley decided to open a car lot in the parking lot in Bisbee, you know, where they got the lights on all night so the cars look pretty at night and stuff. That's the kind of stuff that we don't want. We want these ordinances in place ahead of time so we don't have to fight that battle later.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Are we in any of the phases working toward, I mean, I know there's a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 to become a dark sky community. Are we before phase 1 or are we in phase 1?
We're getting into phase 1 right now. The biggest hurdle for all of this is the city adopting dark skies compliant light ordinances, which you have before you. Okay, on let me see here, I lost my train of thought for a second. On, you know how that happens. The first phase, yeah. And then this is the biggest hurdle. And then our next job at Bisbee Dark Skies, we have to do some more administrative things, like we have to come up with a sum total of all the lights that the city owns, street lights, building lights, things. But that's already been done. I don't know how long you guys have been on. We used to have a sustainability committee. All that ground was already covered, and all those figures are already out there. So we got to start building those kind of things, and with any luck at all, maybe within 6 months to a year, we can become a international dark skies community, which goes out around the world. And a lot of places are doing this already. Things like they got this whole new section of tourism called astrotourism, where people, you know, like if you want to go to Fairbanks in the winter to watch the Northern Lights or something like that, there's these individual cities around here where you can go and have a nice vacation and be able to look up at the stars and see the Milky Way at night. And it's a big plus for a lot of people for a place to go and spend their holiday.
City manager?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm, for the record, Steve Pauken, city manager, but tonight, a dark sky advocate. I think many of you know, who've known me for any length of time, that I do have a backyard observatory, and that I started doing that back when I was the city manager here the first time. And as time has gone on, my, shall we call it, my abilities have gotten better, which has led to spending a lot more money on equipment and bringing more comments from my wife about how much I'm spending. But keeps me home and on, you know, on the bars. So anyway, and I think Mike, you've probably seen these because you've been at my office. There's a couple props. These are 2 astrophotographs. These were taken in my backyard with my telescope, and the reason that I'm able to do that is because we have great skies. Okay, the benchmark for hobbyist astronomers is being able to capture a target any place above 30 degrees above the horizon. Okay. Now, when I worked here the first time, I owned a house very close to the house I own today, and so I was, taking pictures pretty much then and now in the same neighborhood. Our skies, there's a scale called the Bortle scale, and that's the scale we use to determine where the best places are to do astrophotography. And the best is a 1 and the worst is a 10. In my neighborhood, we fluctuate between Bortle 4 and Bortle 5. So we're about halfway between the best and the worst. And you wouldn't think that with what we can see from our skies, but as we were discussing earlier before the meeting, some of the places that we've been, like on the western slope of Colorado with the Bortle 1 sky, it just knocks your socks off. It's so good. Now, the biggest polluters of the sky are cities and counties and states and the federal government, okay? Unfortunately, we can only regulate ourselves, okay? We can't regulate the Border Patrol station down at Naco Highway. That's one of our biggest polluters by far, okay? In fact, that gets in the way of my work because I've got direct line of sight to it. And so, drawing on the experience of the 6 years that I was in Winslow, we had a similar arrangement for city streetlights that we have here. The city owns the lights, the city owns the poles. The utility provides the power, and we have a street lighting maintenance contract with APS, okay? Once I was able to determine what good street light technology looked like, mostly because I was a stone's throw from Flagstaff, where I learned a lot. Company being APS will not buy the right fixture. They refuse, okay? They basically, their policy is buy from the lowest bidder. It's our light, but they determine what we're gonna put on the pole, okay? So in Winslow, what we did was we canceled the contract with APS, okay? When I found out how simple it was to change a streetlight fixture, it was embarrassing, okay? We were paying them $20,000 a year to change a light bulb if it burned out, okay? And the average annual, they have about the same number of streetlights that we have here, about 600. We were changing out somewhere between 10 and 20 light bulbs a year for $20,000, okay? And we were getting bad light on top of it. So we took over the street lighting. You know, we happen to have here a truck suitable for getting up there to change them out. The only impediment is making sure that APS has a disconnect so that we can change it easily. And they're required to have them, but they don't always do it, but then they will if we tell them to. We change them out to a night sky friendly light, which includes not just shielding, but also color temperature, okay? And Matt, Public Works Director, told me on my way out the doors, APS won't give us anything under 3,000 K. Well, 3,000 K is good, but it's not good enough, okay? And so we can purchase the light fixtures ourselves and keep them in stock. We can either change them en masse, or we can change them as they burn out. In Winslow, we chose to change them as they burn out, because then it wasn't a capital project. Because you're talking, you know, a $400 or $500 fixture instead of $100,000 to change 100 or 200 light fixtures. So, moving forward, what we're hoping to do operationally is, in the budget, we put an extra person in the street department this year and moving forward, because we're also anticipating maybe cleaning our streets again. And so that will require the purchase of a piece of equipment to sweep the streets. That's about a 3 to 4 day a week position. So we can use that other day to do streetlight maintenance with the same employee. So operationally, that's the plan moving forward. And of course, we can do that because we've already budgeted it, but we haven't started spending money yet. But we would appreciate being able to have this ordinance in place, so that gives us basically the authority to put in a night sky friendly light as opposed to using whatever we're given. And believe me, I've been having this argument with APS for years, because we had APS in Winslow too, and they nod their heads politely and they say, okay, Steve, and then they buy from the lowest bidder. So if we want to take charge of our own night sky friendly lighting, we have to do it ourselves.
Well, thank you.
A quick question, please, one more. How would this ordinance impact the lights that are on the Big B for Bisbee? And how would it impact the Christmas lights that are on all the streets or the main streets here in Bisbee?
This allows Christmas lights and things like that. They allow decorative lights, and they usually do. I'm not sure, does the city own the lights up at the Big B? I know some people who go up there as volunteers and redo it and paint the rocks and everything.
Technically, that property is owned by a mining company. In fact, we had that conversation, the mayor and I had that conversation just last week with Mr. Keatonard. And because it's starting to look a little shabby up there, it looks like we could use some new whitewash and change some of those light fixtures. Those are basically solar powered LEDs. And their impact on the sky is negligible.
And the same thing with Christmas lights, because that's sort of, people come to Bisbee and they see the Christmas lights, and that's sort of, it's the summertime and the town's got Christmas lights. What's
No,
going on?
yeah, this ordinance will not impact
Okay.
the colored lighting downtown,
Okay.
which is also Christmas lighting at Christmas time.
Yes.
It does have a time limit, though, that the lights need to be turned off by 11
It does.
at night. And then on,
The first thing that it goes into is adaptive controls. We have some lights in town, even on commercial buildings, that don't have the ability to be shut off. They come on every night. And with the new ordinances, with adaptive controls, each one has to have the ability to be turned off. So if somebody wants to turn it off, it goes off with either a timer or whatever, but we have some lights that don't fall under that criteria.
it sounded from what I read that, even the Christmas lights had to be off by 11. Holiday lights.
It could be. Did we, is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have like more technical questions, I have John Baratine, a professional astronomer here who helped me a lot with these regulations and everything going forward to be dark skies compliant. And if you have any really technical issues, he's here to answer any questions you have.
Just to tack on to what Sandy was asking, the lights uptown are basically the responsibility of the city. So the city can take the responsibility for putting the adaptive controls on the lights so they go out at 11 o'clock.
But what about people's displays? Individual displays?
I refuse to ruin Christmas.
Well, it says all illuminated displays shall be extinguished between 11 p.m. and 1 hour before sunrise in the section regarding seasonal decorations.
And you have to be awake at that hour to notice it's happening.
Well, I just know that
There will be no
11:30,
Christmas light police in this city.
11:30, 12 o'clock, there are people, especially in the tourist season, that part of the allure of Bisbee, especially in the
Right.
wintertime.
Right.
You're walking down the street and it's, the Christmas lights
Yeah.
are on, and
Right.
to her point, I would hate to, at 11 o'clock at night, just when restaurants and other activity is getting going for the tourists, that really is part of the lure. And the streets then are dark, especially on Subway Street, as you well know. But I just would like to make
Which
sure.
we're planning, by the way, to take the lights all the way around.
I understand, right. But I just would like to, Susie, I want to make sure that 11 o'clock, those lights, which I think are a contributing factor to the aura of Bisbee, since they don't impact dark sky, then to your point, maybe we change them so that they don't turn off at 11 o'clock, they turn off at 1 o'clock. I don't know if that's
As
possible.
I said, I refuse to ruin Christmas.
But not just at Christmas, but throughout the year. I mean, you know, like, you walk outside tonight,
That's right.
it's part of business.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm saying, and to shut them off at 11 o'clock, I think that would be a mistake. So I would ask that we amend that to maybe 1 o'clock in the morning for the Christmas lights.
That's a
Okay.
reasonable request.
Yeah, I don't have any problems. Out in the neighborhoods and stuff, you guys probably noticed this, some people like their Christmas lights that they leave up. The different colors don't make the bed. They have these like white LEDs that are like supposed to be icicles or something. Those broadcast light everywhere, and those could be a problem. But downtown, there aren't that many residents. I don't think anybody would notice it that much.
Well, yeah,
Like
to
if
your
you said,
point-
if we left them on till 1, nobody would be complaining about it.
So if
Hardly
the
anybody.
icicle lights aren't conforming to the dark sky compliant,
That's right.
then I feel that that would be a reason to tell somebody that, look, if your lights aren't dark sky compliant, then per this, they have to be shut off at 11 o'clock, or they can't be, you have a 10-year window to eventually get rid of them. But if they are dark sky compliant, such as our Christmas lights, then I think 1 o'clock in the morning, or whatever time we can come to an agreement with, is a reasonable time then to turn them off.
Okay.
Well, I think if you're gonna come to an agreement, you need to come to a distinction, because you're talking about colored lights, I believe that's what the city manager referred to them as. And this part of the, is talking about seasonal lights, and not only does it talk about a time limitation, it talks about a calendar limitation as to when they can be in.
Right.
So, what since the colored lights are on every day, night of the year, I wouldn't call them seasonal by any means.
Correct. Bisbee lights.
Right, so they wouldn't, either they wouldn't apply or they should be considered.
I think there's an opportunity to put some type of verbiage in there that clarifies it without being a detriment to the dark sky
Do you see
compliant.
an issue with this?
No, not at all.
I don't know how to write that up, that's not my job.
That's where we go to John.
Yeah,
He knows these things inside and out. Yeah.
I think that'd be a good thing to do.
And I'm actually wondering, because it says seasonal decorations that exceed the lumen cap of section 71012 shall be permitted during this. What actually exceeds that lumen? I mean, do they have to be pretty bright, or would they even fall into
John,
this
would you like to
cap?
address some of these questions? John Barentine, professional astronomer.
For the record, John Barentine with Dark Sky Consulting. Yes, in short, what we're trying to do, the aim here, and I'm 100% with Steve, none of us wants to ruin Christmas, and we don't want to be perceived as light bulbs. What we're trying to do is avoid the really over-the-top kind of displays that become a nuisance, and I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about, while permitting absolutely reasonable installations during the holiday season. The lumen cap issue is when you see somebody who stands out because they've put up 100 strands of white lights on their house, that if you added up all that light, now that's significant. We've been talking about how the normal type of low-intensity Christmas lights that we associate with holiday lighting, it's not something that contributes to light pollution in a way that we're ever going to worry about. When somebody is putting up temporary lighting on their exterior of their house that is vastly in excess of what they would be running on an ordinary night with their other kinds of outdoor lighting, which will also be on at the same time, that's when we start to say, okay, that's a bit much. That's all we're trying to prevent here. And your point about the curfew hour that we've specified, completely negotiable. If you have a copy of the same version that we have here, I've written this in a way that the existing code is written in black text. The few items that are absolutely required by IDA, if Bisbee goes for the designation, are in red text in plain face, and then anything that's in that red or orange with a metallic face, that's considered a best practice but is not required by IDA. So you could walk on the curfew issue altogether and it wouldn't affect your eligibility for the dark sky community designation. We just suggested as a sense of best practice in order to keep the nuisance complaints down and encourage people to be reasonable.
So, you familiar with the American Legion building?
I am not.
I know Steve is, and most everyone is.
I am.
So, as an example, I have my I have my columns. I've wrapped my columns with multicolored lights. I've wrapped the guardrail with lights, because that corner is very dark. In your professional opinion, would that be a violation of what you guys are proposing?
Are you talking about the kind of lighting that's a more or less permanent installation, using them throughout the year, or just for the holidays?
So I have it on all year long.
Those are basically strings of Christmas
They're
lights.
strings.
Yeah, they're
Christmas
low
lights.
intensity
I'm just
lights.
trying to understand where the threshold is.
Right.
Because I have an obnoxious poles that are lit up, so, you know, it is what it is.
Right.
And those are LEDs.
I believe they are LED.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just trying to understand where that threshold is. I know we count lumens. I've had to do it before with projects.
Sure.
But I'm just trying to understand from a layperson's perspective, do you envision that that would be a violation? Or would I have to count the lumens? You know my building.
I do, I'm
Yeah.
familiar with, on Subway there.
So it's all the columns are wrapped, and, you know, it looks like a giant Christmas tree, you know.
Now, without actually finding out how many lumens those things come on,
Right.
put off, I actually have seen them.
Yeah.
Okay? And I would say, just without counting actual lumens, I would say no.
Because I have my timer set to go off at 1 o'clock in the morning. If anyone's out past that, then
That's what I was gonna suggest, as long as it's same with the city lights out front. If we leave those on until 1 o'clock in the morning, I don't think anybody will have any issue with that at all.
right. I just want to make sure they're not in violation of the lumen count, because the lumen count is usually a fallback when you use as a barometer, say, I know your Christmas lights, but the type of lights you have are at this many lumens, and unfortunately, that exceeds the code.
It could, and I say that because the table that's in here that we modified, so you already have a cap right now. And for non-residential settings, you're capped at 3,000 on a net acre, 3,000 lumens of lighting. We're actually proposing to expand that, to give you more of an allowance. Those little typical LED Christmas lights are quite literally a couple of lumens apiece. 3, 4, 5 lumens, maybe. You would have to have thousands of them before you
You'd
would
have to
be.
go hog wild.
Yeah, before you would be.
Okay, that's why I say, because if you've seen my building, and you've seen how I have it wrapped, I really can't put any more lights on if it's already there.
Well, you pretty much use it all up.
Right.
And related to that, from a perspective of a homeowner, let's say, if they were trying to figure this out, the number of lumens that a lighting product emits are printed on packaging of any new lighting that's sold in the US. It's a
Okay.
Department of Energy requirement. So if a homeowner or other property owner was trying to do due diligence here, they would be able to figure out, okay, this box has, this is a strand that's 100 feet long, it's telling me that it's, 800,
Oh, you are
900
putting the lumen
lumens.
count on it, we don't have to hire an electrical engineer anymore?
No, they might not tell you how many lumens per, but they'll tell you in a strand what the total is.
Oh, okay.
So
I
that
didn't know
somebody
that.
can
Never
sit
looked
there
for it
and
before.
with simple arithmetic, figure out if they were in excess of the limit.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I don't foresee that there'd be a problem with that.
Will the Batman signal, is that good or not?
That's not good.
That's
That's not good. So I have to take it down.
Really, he's got to take that down?
Yeah.
That sucks. Does he really?
I'm not sure. I thought you were talking about the Batman symbol in general.
No, the one from.
I thought you were talking about Gotham City.
At Castle Rock.
No, at Castle
Oh, at
Rock.
Castle Rock?
He flashes that onto the mountain, and
I
it's
think
the
he
bat
violates
signal.
something else on that already, but. he's
It's
been-
just, that's the funkiness, you know.
5 or 6 years ago, he was made to turn that off, and I guess it's back on. I mean, I've been back up there when it's on. My guess is probably not. Because it's shining against Castle Rock. It's not
code right now.
It's not sky glow.
It'd be considered a searchlight, and that's prohibited
It is prohibited.
in your existing code.
If I remember correctly, Mike, the first time I worked here, he had that on and he was made to turn it off.
He's got it on all the time. It's cool. I mean, well, again, it's part of business, that sleazy elegance that Bisbee brings.
Well, I don't know if I want to use the word sleazy.
But, you know, it's part of what makes Bisbee Bisbee. And I understand, I've built
Here's-
observatories before, so I
here's-
understand.
Here's the bottom line, Mike. What we're trying to achieve here is we're trying to keep the light from going up.
Well, I understand.
Okay? Because that's when guys like him and me start finding interference with the fun we have.
Right.
Okay? And in his case, the work we do.
Mhm.
Okay? I mean, I'm a hobbyist,
Right.
but, you know, the whole aspect of shielding light from going up and using an appropriate color temperature, keeping the blue part of the spectrum out,
Right.
that's the ultimate
I
goal.
understand.
Okay? And I have a PowerPoint, but I couldn't use it here. But I gave a presentation to the league about 6 or 7 years ago. And I actually took pictures before and after we did a street with the new lights. And you can visibly see the difference. And now, Winslow has a prison. We have a border patrol station. The lighting structure is similar. The government hasn't figured out yet that prisoners and illegal aliens are not above the light fixtures. And so they just use whatever they get from the lowest bidder. And so I actually have, in my PowerPoint, I've got a picture of the Milky Way with the prison between the sky and my camera. And then the same night I went out to the other side of the prison and took the same picture of the Milky Way. And the difference is unbelievable. And that's where we're going with this. I mean, that's the big picture.
I just know from a layperson's perspective that folks, whether it's Christmas time or any other time of year, and they have their holiday lights, would be a little bit bowed up if somebody said, hey, you gotta take them, and you're like, really?
Yeah.
You know, just trying to understand it better. I understand the fully shielded, I have to deal with it all the time in Tucson when we're building, so I get it.
And,
Challenging, that's all.
And, you know, athletic field lighting, that's an area we don't touch. Okay? Well, you can't because it's a safety issue, but think about it. Why worry about an athletic field? Because when the game's over, they turn the lights off. And, you know, a high school football game lasts till what, 9:30? You know? So,
You make a motion?
Well, I'd like to add something. I appreciate all of your efforts and the fact that you did so much legwork before it actually came to us with this, so thank you. I have to admit my ignorance when it comes to dark sky, the dark sky initiative. So I went online and I started researching when I got this, and I went to the darksky.org. And excellent website. If you haven't done that to prepare for this, I would recommend it. Because in addition to, you know, people could say, this is a niche here of people that observe the sky, that are into this, and why do I have to comply with this? But there's so many other things. It affects the plants. It affects our plants, it affects animals, it affects their migration, their breeding habits, their feeding habits. Safety is a big thing. Oh, I can't turn out the lights because then it'll be dark. There's proven studies that that is not the case, that not all darkness costs you your safety. So there are a whole lot more things involved in dark sky, and why to go with dark sky, besides observing the stars, which is a big one. But there's so many more things involved. And once I read everything that was involved, I'm becoming an advocate. I really do believe in this. The one thing that I hope would happen, should we continue to progress in Bisbee on this, is people are going to, well, two things. First of all, I don't want a policy, another policy on the books, or another code on the books that nobody pays attention to. You know, when you say, well, we can leave that in, but nobody's going to check on it. I don't want to do that. I mean, I really like something that's workable for people. I really hope that we do a whole series of public information programs, maybe out of the library, because the library always has these good educational sessions, that in a simple way, you know, besides all of the language in here that deals with the number of lumens and the this and the that, in a simple way where people know they're not going to be sacrificing their safety, they're not going to be sacrificing, you know, some of their colored lights, but they buy into this for the environment, you know, for the plants, for the animals, as well as for the beauty of the sky. So I would hope that that would happen too, to gain community support.
You know, thank you. You
Yeah,
bring
thank
up a
you.
really good point, because the guy who I bought my streetlights from up in Winslow retrofitted Hilo, Hawaii. And actually, I'm hoping that someday I can get the pictures from him. He put a guy up in a helicopter and took pictures of the city before and after. And the difference is not only stark, but when you hear the stories coming from there about turtles coming to shore, laying their eggs, that they hatch and they have to go back to the sea, okay? The lights are important because if they can go the wrong way and they end up dead. And then you end up with another problem. And when you go to the eye doctor tries to sell you a blue light coating, okay? Ostensibly because he says, well, if you're looking at a computer screen, you need a blue light coating. You can now set your cell phone camera for softer light so that it doesn't glare. They do that because we have to do it because of what we've done to ourselves, basically. And that's the bottom line. And it does, you know, all kinds of wildlife can be damaged by this. Your circadian rhythm can be taken out by the wrong light.
Isn't it for you astronomers though, because of where we are, you guys are sleeping anyway now, because I know that the dome we just built in Vail, the guy's like, everything's automated, so his dome opens up at like 3 in the morning and he wakes up to all these cool pictures. So isn't that pretty much how we are in this part of the region, when you're looking at stars and
Mike,
stuff?
I got a lot of money invested in my equipment, but it won't do that.
Okay.
Okay, those of us who hobby in our backyards, we are the ones up at night,
Okay.
okay?
But I'm saying it's still at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
Well, okay, I've got a friend that works at the Catalina Sky Survey. What do? They hunt asteroids. They hunt near-Earth objects. And then they calculate their orbit so that if they're coming right for us, we know it in advance, okay? Those dudes are up all night.
But my point is though, at 2 o'clock in the morning, you should be sleeping anyway. So the lights are turned off.
Well, when I was retired, I'd stay up all night and sleep all day.
So we make a motion?
Yes. There's one for us here.
I would make a motion just with subject to that 11 o'clock rule, to see if we can't change that to something that's amicable for the businesses or for the civilians. Withstanding that the lumen count of somebody's Christmas lights don't exceed the maximum count. However you want to write that up.
Okay. I would say, you really need to make something definite in your motion, so I would say if 1 o'clock is the agreeable time for you, then let's put that in motion.
Okay.
Council can always change it again later.
I make a motion that the lights be turned off at 1 o'clock instead of 11 o'clock.
Okay, you can modify your motion there to,
I move the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to Mayor and City Council propose changes to Article 7 Light Pollution Code, that we amend that to 1 o'clock in the morning.
okay? A second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'll do a roll call vote then. David Cobb,
Yes.
Douglas Dunn, yes. Andy Hoosman?
Yes?
Yes. Mike Abbott?
Yes.
It's carried. I thank you all for this presentation. It was certainly very enlightening, and I just came back from California coast, and of course, they have a phenomenon called fog. I think in 2.5 weeks, we only saw a sunset once. So,
Well, you know, I took my optics out of the observatory before I went on vacation, first week in July, and there's been no point putting it back in. I mean, we haven't had clear nights since, you know, the rain started, so yeah, I mean, as much as we'd love to, because Saturn was in opposition, a couple of days ago, wasn't it? And I'm on Facebook looking at all these cool images of Saturn that all these guys everywhere else are taking, and we can't even see it without, you know, so it is what it is.
okay, we now move on to commissioner comments. And again, refrain from any discussion, but these are items that we would like to address in terms of future meetings or any other subject. Do we have anything else? Okay. Do have a motion for adjournment?
I do have one thing
Okay.
before we adjourn. I need to be excused from the next meeting, Ashley, because I will not be in town.
Okay.
And then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.